client reached out to us via LinkedIn, asked for a meeting. We had an initial phone call. And what we learned was that they were a $5 billion company, and that their specific division, they had 5 divisions, their specific division was responsible for around 25% of the revenue. The executive, the president of that division, knew that innovation, being able to lead or build new value, value that was going to affect the growth of the organization, was going to be important. This division represented 25% of the revenue of the overall company, which means they had an outsized impact on the growth. As a result, they decided to take some of those funds and invest them in an innovation team. They took a year to build the team. And in that year, they went through an interviewing process. They defined the characteristics of this cross-functional team. They had leaders who had been in the company for well over 15 years and some who had been in the organization for around 10 years. So they had a cross-section of experience, also technical experience, as well as personality and specific leadership skills. And whenever I met the team, I knew that this was the perfect team. Now, part of that was because of the years of experience that I've had in both working with cross-functional leaders in implementing innovation, and some of it was just also evaluating the methodologies that they used to define the characteristics of the roles within the specific goals of this innovation team. So in our first meeting, we discussed what was the purpose of this team. And the purpose was to drive roughly $20 million in new revenue creation within this division over the course of 5 years. While in our experience, when leading innovation processes and understanding how to identify actual value creators within a system or an organization, $20 million is 100% feasible. We can tie direct efforts today to a $20 million return 5 years from now. 5 years is a very important number also, because it can take that amount of time to establish a foundation and a process, then go through the testing, then validate and prove ideas over and over and over again. Now, this wasn't $20 million from one idea. This was through a multitude of ideas that would be implemented and proven within a system. So our goal was to demonstrate to them how we could accelerate their outcomes and maybe even increase them within that time frame, both of which they were a little hesitant to believe that that was possible. But they came to us with a very specific challenge. After a year of forming together as a team, they'd been working together for 6 months, they had conducted, which is the first level of innovation inquiry or discovery, which was customer interviewing. And they had over 100 interviews of key stakeholders within the organization. They had an incredible amount of data. They had all kinds of suggestions for very future-forward innovations, and honestly didn't know where to start. There was too much data to be able to prioritize and make decisions. And they needed some expertise on framing the problem to be solved today, prioritizing which of the needs and initiatives were going to matter the most and make the biggest impact for their long-term gain, and then a process for testing and vetting ideas. And what was interesting was that how we came together in our discovery process became the differentiator for how we worked going forward. The first differentiator is that many of the innovation consultants that they spoke with did not actually refused to tie return on investment on the innovation efforts at hand. And I think that's very dangerous, because the definition that I grew up with in the innovation profession is that innovation is about realized value. Value creation is a very commonly used term today overall in company growth and in the process of identifying new opportunities. But here's the simple definition that we understood. Value equals the benefit divided by the cost. And in today's world of designing for experiences that feel incredibly intuitive, easy, frictionless, simple, that realized value, the benefit and the cost of it, can be real or perceived. Perceived value still is valuable. You can put a dollar amount to perceived value over and over. And that it can be identified through a service experience. So when we gathered for our initial discovery session, identified the long-term goal, examined the breadth and depth of the work and some of the key insights that they had learned so far, really evaluated the entirety of all of the different technologies that they were being encouraged to explore, some very experimental, some proven. The big question was, where do we start? Well, in my initial analysis, what I learned, and I learn this with clients all the time, some of it could be, maybe it's a challenge. I see innovation everywhere, though. I see innovation potential in the individuals. I see innovation potential in systems. I see the potential for that value creation. You have an expertise. You know more about your company than anyone else. You know more about the customer than anyone else. Let's really harness what you know and help you prioritize it within what needs to be worked on today so that you can have the long-term impact. It's part goal planning, part ambition, part accountability and strategic planning, part marketing and messaging, part focusing on what matters most for the moment at this time. It's 100% though outcome-based. So we were one of the only firms that said, yes, you can directly tie innovation efforts today to the revenue generation machine, to the value creation machine that is happening within your organization, and we can definitively tie it to a return on investment. That was one of the big differentiators. The other big differentiator was that what we care about, when we say we are customer obsessed, what matters most to me is that you are successful. That what I see in you is your innovation potential is realized as well. That your leadership, your communication skills, your ability to build a business case, your ability to work with your peers and your colleagues, your ability to guide individuals through the change that is implicit within innovation, your ability to bring new ideas to the company, to challenge the status quo, your ability to prioritize as a team, your ability to fight for the best idea, not your idea, is really what we care about. And that became the second major differentiator. The third major differentiator was that we have a process that aligns with the large-scale strategy of the organization. It doesn't matter to us where the strategy came from. If leadership, the C-suite, the executives who are sponsoring this initiative have things that they are being held accountable to, we need to know that. We need to know what is being measured at the top line so that we can have the impact and focus on the efforts at hand first. So those were the three major differentiators: a proven process, our belief in the individual having an impact, and then really focusing on that end return on innovation. So they hired us and they asked us for a really aggressive timeline. So what usually takes 90 days, they asked for us to accomplish in 2 weeks. And we eat our own dog food. We take our own medicine. So we designed an experience which maximized the executive contribution by minimizing how much time they needed to invest. I'm going to repeat that. Executives don't have to be involved in 8-hour-long meetings every day to define the innovation pathway. They've already set the course with the strategy of the company. All we need is to say, this is what we've learned. We need your feedback on this very specific outcome that we're going for. Is it possible? Is there funding available? If not, what are we going to have to do instead? How do we prioritize this? What should we be thinking about? So we maximize their executive expertise in a highly designed, proven way of engaging in decision-making and prioritization to move innovation and organize the innovation process as we move forward. So in 2 weeks, we defined the 5-year innovation strategy, the 2-year innovation outcomes, the 1-year innovation plan, and the 90-day innovation targets. That was an accelerated experience for them, but it set the foundation. And our first 90 days, we worked really closely with that team to make sure that we were doing the important work at hand. And for them, it was gathering together the systems, processes, and tools that they needed to make sure that their 3-year to 5-year innovation initiatives would be successful. It was about gathering the right stakeholders, and it was also about prioritizing these future forward technologies within a correct timeline of implementation. When were these technologies going to be vetted enough to be able to test an investment? Who did they need to engage with from an expertise standpoint? What was the minimum viable investment that they needed to be able to test and vet this? The bonus was that out of that 90-day period, we also helped them budget for innovation, which was to prioritize where they could make small, validated bets for larger, validated investments, which in some cases had to do with some process redesign and some technology investment that would create a differentiator overall in their user experience.